Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, April 24th. This is lesson 7. Let's get started. Here we go. Our target. I could find the area of rectangles with mixed by mixed and fraction by fraction, side lengths by tiling, sketching or making a drawing, and relating to fraction multiplication, which we are all familiar with from our prior lessons. So make sure you have your pencil and notebook or your paper ready to go. And before we start, let's do our multiples of 8 today. We will recite them out loud while writing them, or while you're walking, you can take each step and say them out loud. So ready? Let's begin. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, 96. You guys should be getting really good at these. Okay, let's review what we learned yesterday before we get started for today's lesson. I'm sure you remember this picture here. When given a rectangle with a mixed number and a whole number, we showed a sketch of the rectangle and broke apart the mixed numbers. Let's go over one now. So let's break this up. We have 2.5, so we have 2 here, and then we have half shown down here 3 times. Here's our 3 units up at the top. So our 2.5 times 3 equals 3 times 2 plus 3 times the half. I'm sure you recall this from yesterday. So 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times a half is 1.5. And if we add them together, you get 7.5. Okay, today we're going to start with looking at this rectangle. Let's read together what Mrs. Golden needs. Read the problem below out loud with me right now. Ready? Begin. Mrs. Golden needs 26 square pieces of paper to cover the board. No pieces are left over because it multiplies evenly. If you look carefully, you're multiplying 4 times 6, and then you have this half a piece here also. So it's 4 times 6 is 24. They wrote the answer right on the rectangle. And 4 times a half is 2. So 24 plus 2 gave us what's highlighted here, 26 feet squared. This is area, not volume. Length times width, units squared is area. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this area model to show how we will get the area of this rectangle. I'll do the first one for you, and then we will do one together. Okay, so let's look at the diagram. I see 4.5 times 2.5, and they broke it up by saying 4 plus a half and 2 plus a half. So now you have a mixed number multiplied by a mixed number, and they broke up this mixed number by saying 2 plus the half, and they broke up this mixed number by saying 4 plus that half. Okay, so first we're going to say 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times a half is 1, and 8 plus 1 equals 9. We're finished with that. Now we're going to come over to the half, and we're going to say a half times a 4 equals 2 units squared. And a half times a half gives us 1/4 unit squared. When I add those up together, 2 plus 1/4, I get 2 and 1/4 units. So now I have 9 units squared and 2 and 1/4 units squared. And when I add those together, I get 11 and 1/4 units squared. Okay, so let's do this one together. Here we go. 3 1/4 times 1 3/4. Remember, There's a couple ways you can do this. You can break each mixed number apart and multiply, or we'll get to the second part next. Just keep that in the back of your mind. So let's follow our steps. First, let's break this apart. So you have 3 times 1. So you have your 3 and 3/4, they separated here. 3 plus your 3/4, and your 1 and 3/4 is 1 plus 3/4. Okay, it's very clearly mapped out for you. So now you have 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 3/4 is going to be 9/4. So now I've got 3, got 9/4. Okay? Now you come to the bottom, and you've got 3/4 times 1, which is 3/4, and then you've got 3/4 times 3/4, and now you have 9/16. Now you have to take all of those answers that you got, and you need to add them all up. And when we add them all up, keep in mind when you're adding fractions, you must have the same common denominator. So I'm using 16 as my common denominator, and when I add 3 plus 9/4 plus 3/4 plus 9/16, I'm going to get 6 and 9/16. That's going to be my final answer. Here's another way that you could do that same problem. When we do this problem, you'll notice that we have solved problems like this before in our RTI groups. So here we go. 3 and 3/4 times 1 and 3/4. Step 1, change each mixed number to an improper fraction. Step 2, multiply your numerators across, multiply your denominators across. Don't forget that if you end up with a fraction that's improper, then you need to divide. So let's try this. 3 and 3/4 turns into 15/4. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15/4. And 1 and 3/4 turns into 7/4, because 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7, and you put it over the same denominator, 7/4. Now we have 15/4 times 7/4. 15 times 7 is 105. 4 times 4 is 16. So remember, 105 is much bigger than 16. It's an improper fraction. You need to divide, and you get 6 and 9/16. Whichever way is good for you is fine with me. If you like the breaking them apart and adding them all together when you got done, fine. If you like to take both of these fractions, mixed numbers, and make them into improper fractions and then multiply, that may be a better option for you. Totally up to you. Okay, now on your own, I would like you to solve these. I'm going to give you time to complete these questions. So right now, I would like you to pause this video and try these on your own. Keep in mind that you now have 2 ways to solve these problems. You can break them apart and then add, or you can change each mixed number to an improper fraction and multiply across, multiply across. Okay, ready? Pause the video. See you in a little bit. Here's the solution for the first one. Let's go through this. Please follow along and correct if you need to. I'm going to show you 2 ways to figure this one out. Here's the first one. The first way, I have your diagram to the side. 1½ times 3/4. 1 plus the half, and you only have to multiply each of these parts by 3/4 this time. So you have 1 times 3/4 and half times 3/4, and then we're going to add those together. So I have 3/4, 1 times 3/4 is 3/4, plus a half times 3/4 is 3/8. So now I need, if I'm going to add these together, I need to have the same common denominator, which I chose 8. So we had to change 3/4 to 6/8, meaning that we multiplied the bottom and the top. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So I multiplied by 2 at the bottom and got 8, and multiplied 3 times 2 at the top and got 6. 6 over 8 plus 3 over 8 is 9 over 8. And your answer should be 1 1/8. That's one way. Your second way, you're going to take 1 1/2 and make it into an improper fraction and multiply it by 3 over 4. 3 over 2, 2 times 1 plus 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 over 2 times 3 over 4. Multiply your numerators. 3 times 3 is 9. Multiply your denominators. 2 times 4 is 8. You got 9 over 8, just like you did for your first problem, the way you solved it. And your final answer, again, is 1 1/8. We had to divide because 9 over 8 is an improper fraction. So here are those 2 ways for you again. I hope you made corrections as I went along and figured that out for you. So the first one, 1 1/2 times 3/4, we changed the mixed numbers to improper fractions, got 1 1/8, 1 1/8. The second one was also 2 1/4 times 1/2, and I got 1 1/8 for that one also. 9 over 4 times 1/2 would be 9 times 1 is 9, 4 times 2 is 8, and got 1 1/8 when I divided because it's an improper fraction. Look at the third one, 4 1/2 times 3 over 4. 9 over 2 times 3 over 4. 9 times 3 is 27 over 2 times 4, which is 8. Again, improper fraction, we needed to divide, and I got 3 3/8. Let's review what our target one last time. I can find the area of rectangles with mixed by mixed and fraction by fraction side lengths by tiling, by drawing the sketch, and relating it to fraction multiplication. Let's recall that we went over 2 different ways to solve for area. One way you can solve is by sketching your rectangle and breaking apart a mixed number. Once you multiply each part, then you are to add your answers together. Another way is to change your mixed numbers into improper fractions before multiplying them across. You would multiply your numerators across, then you would multiply your denominators across. And for both ways, if it's improper when you get an answer, then you need to divide to get your final answer. Okay, great class, everyone. Don't forget, complete your assignments and go back and look at the video if you have any questions. Have a great weekend.